if you want to be successful, you've got to be comfortable being over your skis. Building the Miramar Resort on the beach up in Montecito that had a train running through it is the craziest idea in the world.
I would imagine with the work that you do, you get criticism left, right, and center.
Yeah. If you want to avoid criticism, stay at home, watch TV.
What did you know about fire preparation that the city officials just didn't?
What's predictable is preventable. This isn't the first fire in the city of Los Angeles. What do you do as a city official? Learn.
It's increasingly expensive to operate a small business in Los Angeles.
The city makes it difficult for you to do business here. That's why so many small businesses are closing. But you also have to have this attitude that there's going to be a solution for every problem. There's a great picture of Walt Disney the day before Disneyland opened. There is nobody there. And you just see that look on his face like, is this going to work? I think the great lesson that I took away from Walt Disney is...
I'm Sammi Cohen, and this is Social Currency, a podcast that unpacks the stories that are shaping business, culture, and the intersection of the two. Before we get started, quick reminder. If you want to support Social Currency, the easiest way to do that is to hit subscribe. It helps us keep growing and bringing you conversations with the people building some of the most influential companies and brands in the world, like today's guest, Rick Caruso. Rick has literally reshaped the landscape of Los Angeles, and he is the founder and executive chairman of Caruso, the real estate company behind iconic destinations like The Grove, Americana at Brand, and Palisades Village. Over the course of his career, he's built a billion-dollar real estate empire by turning shopping centers into immersive experiences that people treat almost like theme parks. In our conversation, Rick shares about the Disney-inspired philosophies that transformed his properties into some of the most visited retail spaces in America, and advice for any type of founder who receives a lot of criticism and pushback. We also talk about the very public decision not to run for mayor or governor, and dig into some of the most pressing topics in our community, the aftermath of the LA fires, homelessness, and small business challenges in Los Angeles. OG Social Currency listeners know this, but just a reminder, you may hear things on the show that you don't agree with, and that is totally fine. I don't even agree with everything my guests always say. I love hearing your takes and opinions, so please feel free to share them. So without further ado, this is Rick Caruso's Social Currency. This episode is brought to you by Mercury, radically different banking loved by over 300,000 entrepreneurs. Here's a reality check. You wouldn't run your business on outdated software. You wouldn't ship products using tools from the 90s. So why are so many of us still banking like it's 1995? I switched to Mercury after one too many frustrating experiences trying to send a simple wire transfer. We're talking phone tag with my bank, waiting on hold, manually confirming details that should have been automatic. Meanwhile, I'm losing hours I could have spent actually building my business. Mercury has changed that completely. It works the way you'd expect best-in-class software to work. It's intuitive, fast, and elegant. I can send same-day ACH transfers, issue invoices, see exactly where my business stands financially, all from one dashboard. There are no in-person visits, no surprise fees, no duct taping together 5 different tools to do one thing. And as my team has grown, I can give my bookkeeper access to exactly what she needs. Nothing more, nothing less. Spending limits, merchant locks, multi-step approvals before money moves, it just works. If you don't accept mediocre tools anywhere else in your work, why accept them for something as important as your money? Visit Mercury.com to learn more and apply online in minutes. Mercury is a fintech company, not an FDIC-insured bank. Banking services provided through Choice Financial Group and Column NA, members FDIC. Rick Caruso, welcome to Social Currency.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
You've said that following your passion is some of the worst founder advice.
Yes.
Yet I look at someone like you who has built a billion-dollar real estate empire doing something that it seems like you truly love. So before we get into your business, career, and politics, what do you think most people get fundamentally wrong about how to become successful?
Well, I do think it's being just driven by your passion, because what does work, I'll start out what I think does work and why I was really lucky, is I seem to have a talent for real estate, and I'm also passionate about it. And the part of real estate that I'm really passionate about is the creative side of it. So if you put me in a situation where you said, go build industrial buildings or go build data centers, I wouldn't be as successful doing that. I mean, I could figure it out like most people could figure it out. But that's sort of a fundamental real estate play, right? The world that I'm in and why I gravitated towards retail isn't because I had some great business plan on reinventing what a retail center should be, because I didn't. what I did have is that I love being around people, and I love the energy of people, and I really love making people happy. And so what is the format that I can do that? I can do that in a retail format, right? And because it will be with people there. And then you create beautiful spaces and all these other kind of things. I started doing industrial, and I did just fine, but I was bored to death. So the passion side for me was I love people and wanted to be in a business that would be people-centric, guest-centric, a service industry, hospitality. Those kind of things are what really resonated with me. And I've always loved real estate for some reason. And the two married up brilliantly. But before that, I was practicing law, and I wasn't particularly great at it. I was with a big law firm based out of New York that had an office here in L.A. And I would have been okay as a lawyer, but I never would have had great success. I probably would have never been a great lawyer because I certainly wasn't passionate about it. But if you're passionate about something, but you're not good at it, then you got to be really honest with yourself and say, I probably need to pivot and find something else.
Yeah. So something like real estate, I would imagine a lot of people love the magic of, beautiful buildings and bringing people together. Sure. But something I want to double click into is how did you know that you would be good at it? Right?
I didn't know.
But for you to take that leap, you were a lawyer before, you decided to take this leap of faith into real estate.
Right.
You weren't necessarily doing real estate law.
No, I was doing corporate law. Even as a little kid, I was always enamored with buildings. I don't know why. I just was. So I knew I had that sort of wiring in my brain, but I didn't know if I was going to be good at it. I didn't know anything about retail. And I think that was a gift because there really is a gift to going into an industry and maybe not knowing all the rules, because then you're not as afraid to break a lot of the rules. If I grew up in the real estate industry or went from college and worked for a big mall company, I would have learned a lot. I would have also learned that you build these big boxes with no windows, two big anchor stores, a lot of escalators, no trees, no fountain, right? And that would have been, okay, that's what you do. But what I was doing is I was following what I thought people wanted, not what the industry wanted. Mm-hmm. And that gave me incredible freedom. It's liberating in a way. But at the same token, you've got to do your homework. You have to be smart, all of those kind of things. And there's a lot of good fortune and luck that gets involved in it. You got to work hard. But I really was a student of people's behavior. And a big part of that was growing up in an Italian family that is very people-centric, going to Italy, being in the piazzas, in a small, very modest town where my family came from, relatively poor town. But I would see the joy in the piazzas at the end of the day and the kids running around. And as the sun was setting, people having dinner and a bottle of wine, and there was a little bit of music. And all of a sudden, you just say, wow, what a great way to live life. And we weren't doing that in the United States. And so could I import that and create an environment that felt authentic and organic, that people would want to be there just to enjoy the day? And then I figured if they're there to enjoy the day, then they'll shop and dine. It was very basic. I mean, it wasn't like a really complicated business plan.
But a lot of what you've said, it's almost like you had this intuition because you had this love of these spaces and you saw something that other people may have seen but weren't necessarily at the point where they were ready to integrate it into these spaces, right? Because if you're a real estate developer and you're building this massive complex and you're trying to pack as many tenants in and maximize, your monthly cash flow, and
that's right. That's what you're doing.
It takes a little bit of risk and feeling like you're going to take a chance on this. And there was a world in which maybe your first few properties wouldn't have been successful, but you had to take that step.
I'm a really big believer that if you want to be successful, in addition to hard work and being smart and all those other kind of things, you've got to be comfortable being over your skis. At this stage of my life, I'm still over my skis. And I like to be over my skis to the point that sometimes it is a little bit uncomfortable. Like building the Miramar Resort on the beach up in Montecito that had a train running through it is the craziest idea in the world. right? So you've got to be a little bit over your skis, and you've got to be able to tolerate risk and do it in a way that you say to yourself, okay, I'm going to figure this out. You also have to have this attitude in your life that there's going to be a solution for every problem. And it may not be the solution you want or you expected, but if you keep working towards the solution, you'll find the solution. And that's just sort of the way I approached it. But every project that I built, and I have a great team of people, and obviously the team grew as the company grew, we learned from, we watched, what was working, what wasn't working, how people were responding. And they started out relatively modest, and got more complex and bigger along the way. But you've got to really be a student of people, and then you got to be a student of yourself. Mm-hmm. And be honest with yourself.
You just mentioned that train going through the Rosewood Miramar, so I have to ask a few follow-up questions there. Because I've also heard that you say that there's this rule that you have and you apply it to each of your properties, where you say that you can either isolate something on a property or you can celebrate it.
Right,
and obviously you chose to celebrate the train running through your
hotel.
You can't
isolate a train 6 times a day. Yeah.
So can you walk me through first what that framework means to you and perhaps examples of other properties and things that you had to isolate or celebrate?
I mean, take a look at the Grove. So when we built the Grove, the Fairfax district was a long forgotten, rundown part of Los Angeles. Had a long history, but long forgotten. And it was viewed as a predominantly Jewish area. And the farmers market was really on its back. Financially, it was not doing well. There we had to make a decision. Okay, are we going to lean in and celebrate the farmers market, or are we going to isolate it? And the project before the Grove was a typical indoor mall that just by definition isolated the farmers market and turned its back on it. And I said, no. What we're going to do is we're going to celebrate it. We're going to celebrate it psychologically and physically. And that's where the little trolley came in, that the trolley was going to connect the two so that it looked logical, that it was there for a reason. And the better the Grove did, the better the farmers market would do, which has happened, which is great. So everybody became a winner in it. But for the guest experience, it was seamless, right? Mm-hmm. If we would have built the Grove and the back of our buildings were facing the market, it would have been maybe the easy thing to do. In some respects, people might have thought it is the safest thing to do. It wouldn't have been the best thing to do. And what we did do, which a lot of people criticized us in the beginning, criticized me, is we turned our back on 3rd Street and we created an environment internally. And a lot of these people that know everything, that have designed buildings forever, and urban planners, how do you can't turn your back to a street. This is terrible. Well, we did it very intentionally because we wanted to create our own environment that we could protect and curate and make people feel like they were transported to a different time and place in a better world. And that worked out well, too. Mm-hmm. So these are just sort of these decisions you make. You never know if they're going to really work, to be honest. You learn over time what works. But they're fun to take these chances with, honestly.
You just mentioned that you were criticized for one of your decisions there. I would imagine with the work that you do, you get criticism left, right, and center over design decisions, how you're incorporating the community in some way. What's your advice even to someone who is constantly getting criticized for different decisions you're making?
Take it in. I think it's one of the best things that can happen. Because if you're not getting criticized, that's just saying you're not going anywhere. If you want to avoid criticism, stay at home, watch TV, and do nothing. But if you're going to go out and make a difference, and you're going to push the limits, and you're going to be over your skis a little bit, you're going to get criticism. You're going to get compliments, and you're going to get criticism. And I think listening to the criticism is really, really important because it's not always accurate, but sometimes it is, and you learn from it. Mm-hmm. And you can't really be thin-skinned. And I look at also on our properties, what's really easy is that people vote on their feet, and the fact that they're so popular and they're crowded, and you walk around and you just see so many people happy. That's what I care about the most. I don't worry at all about sort of the academic criticizing how we've designed something, because I would probably ask the academic back, Tell me what you've designed that people have enjoyed. So I'm sure people were critical of the Colosseum when it was built, of the Vatican when it was built. So not that I've done anything that monumental, but that's just part of the game. It's part of the business.
This episode is brought to you by Mercury, radically different banking, now available for personal accounts. So if you've been listening for a while, you know that I use Mercury for my business banking. It's fast, it's intuitive, it works the way that modern software should. No phone calls, no waiting on hold, no clunky interfaces that feel like they were built in 2003. And I always thought, why can't my personal banking work like this too? Turns out, now it can. Mercury just launched personal accounts, and it's the same level of design and intention that I've come to rely on for my business, but now for my personal finances. I can set up sub-accounts for different goals, whether that's a home renovation fund, a travel account, whatever project I'm currently working toward. I can automate transfers so those goals actually get funded without me having to think about it. There's high-yield savings to put idle cash to work. And if you manage finances with a partner or need to give your accountant read-only access during tax season, you can do that seamlessly. It's banking designed for people who want to bring that same craft and intentionality to their personal lives as they do to their work. And you can toggle between business and personal with a single click. Visit mercury.com/personal to learn more. Mercury is a fintech company, not an FDIC-insured bank. Banking services provided through Choice Financial Group and Column NA, members FDIC. And of course, even though you have critics, you have many very avid fans of what you've built and the communities that you've created. And I think people are really interested in the worlds that you build and the methods in which you build these worlds, because it is extremely strategic. And it seems like every single detail is thought out to the degree of a Disneyland on steroids, at least as someone who goes to your properties. That's how I perceive it. And I was listening to a talk that you had done, and this is one of the methods that you've used and you currently use, and this is pertaining to the Rosewood Miramar. I heard you say that every morning you look at the guest check-in list at the Miramar Hotel to identify if there's someone special checking in. So can you share a little bit more about why you do that?
Because I'm in the hospitality business, and how lucky am I? This sounds so corny, but how lucky am I to be able to send a special note to somebody who's coming in the hotel, or a special gift? And it's not just if somebody's famous or important. I also read why they're coming. And there's usually a note in there. And like the other day, there was somebody coming that I didn't know, but we're celebrating their 70th birthday. And I thought, how great is that they're coming to? So let's have flowers in there, and let's have a note from me and Tina. I put my cell phone in there. If you need anything, give me a call. I think that's the true meaning of hospitality, is welcoming somebody. And I love doing that. And I think for so many people checking in, it's unexpected. But I do the same thing when I walk around our properties. I stop and talk to people, and people stop and talk to me. And I ask people what they like and what they don't like. And I think that's the fun part about the business.
The special little details, I think, are what really bring it over the top. And when I was at the Rosewood Miramar a few months ago, and I think this is one example of many that you do across your properties, but there's a plaque that is inscribed on the side of the hotel. And this is just something that makes it feel so differentiated and special to you and your family and the legacy that you've built. But I want to read the message.
Sure.
It says, "Lord, you have given us so many good things. Give us one thing more. Give us grateful hearts."
Right.
And that's such a beautiful message.
It's one of my favorite passages out of the Bible.
Yeah. So why include that on the site?
Well, let me go back a little bit, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So in every project that I build, little things for the family, right? And I did a post about this. So there's either statues of when the kids were young, or whatever the case is. There's signal flags on some of them, but every single property has something. And you wouldn't know it's there unless we pointed it out. And I did it as a special little gesture, not only for my kids, but more so for my grandkids and my great-grandkids, that there's something there about their parents on these properties. So up at the Miramar, my kids are now older, so we're not going to have statues of, 30-year-old people like we did when they were 2. I asked them to give me your favorite passage. And each one of my 4 kids gave me their favorite passage. And when you walk out into the veranda through the doors, in the stone is set in bronze their passage. So, following my own direction, I put my favorite passage near the fireplace, separate from the kids, near the fireplace. But I truly believe every day that I'm literally one of the luckiest people in the world, and blessed and fortunate. And I think what's so critically important is to always remind ourselves just to be grateful, just to say, thank you, God, for being so good to me and good to my family and whatever the case is. And I just love that passage. I don't know. I mean, gratitude to me is understated. It needs to be a bigger priority in people's lives. I think we'd have a better, happier, more civil community if there was more people that were grateful.
Completely agree.
Yeah.
Completely agree. And so we've talked about the Rosewood, but what I also want to talk about are your properties more generally. And I made the Disney reference before. I'm sure you hear that all of the time. I've heard that you've studied Disney a lot, but they've also taken a look at what you've done and they've studied what you're doing.
Right.
And I'd love to hear some of the other Disney-isms that you incorporate into your properties.
Well, listen, I studied Walt Disney a lot as a person, as a manager, as an executive, read a lot about him. And I'm not a big book reader, but that was an exception for me. I read a lot of things, but I got to do better on reading books. And then studied what Disney was doing from a design standpoint, an operating standpoint, things like that. And you're right. It turned out that Disney was also studying us a lot. And we actually came together, and for a long time, we're sharing ideas back and forth. And Disney actually asked us to go around the world and help them with their parks and their sort of commercial part of it. And that was a lot of fun. And to speak to all their Imagineers around the world, which I did this global conference, that was just really cool. So we've been students of each other, which is really neat for companies to be able to do that. The thing that I got that was most important to me is the maintenance, the cleanliness, and the level of hospitality. Now, they design things differently, like in Old Town Main Street, that's in 7/8 scale. So it's not a 1-to-1 scale. So the size of the windows or 7/8, and it's to allow a different perspective, but it's also to be able to get more storefronts in, right? Because you're shaving off some space. But what I really studied is how just clean it is. Mm-hmm. And they display it being cleaned. Mm-hmm. So a lot of places would never want to show the housekeeping staff working. Disney, if you remember, their housekeeping staff is walking around with brooms and cleaning it. Okay, we do that on all of our properties. We want people to see that we're constantly cleaning the properties. We polish everything. If you take a look at all of our trash cans, as crazy as it sounds, they're intentionally made with a brass top, and the brass top is polished every day. And you say to yourself, well, why would you polish the damn trash cans? Because it lets you know as a guest and a consumer, we care about you. We care about your happiness, your safety, your cleanliness, all these kind of things. So a lot of that came from Disney. But from Disney itself, the person, I think, is really important because I remind people his trade and his skill was being a cartoonist. If he had just remained a cartoonist, we'd probably never know who Walt Disney was. And then he started the Walt Disney Company, and he was a good manager. But even at that, we probably would have never known who Walt Disney was. What made Walt Disney Disney is he combined his trade, his management skills, and his guts to be a visionary and have the ability to look around a corner and take a chance, especially when nobody believed in him. Mm-hmm. Like building Disneyland, nobody believed in this guy, and he kept going. And that's, I think, the great lesson that I took away from Walt Disney is believe in yourself. If you think you're seeing around a corner, lean in and go for it, right? And even if everybody's telling you it will never happen, everybody told him Disneyland was going to be a massive failure. There's a great picture I saw in a friend's office. He's a movie producer. And it's a picture of, and I'd love to get a copy of it. It's a picture of Walt Disney the day before Disneyland opened. And he's sitting on a little like bench in Disneyland. There is nobody there. And you just see that look on his face like, is this going to work? Right? And boy, did it. So I think everybody who's an entrepreneur and a big dreamer, be like Walt Disney.
One of the elements that Disney has done very well is this sense of almost surprise and delight. You know you're going to be delighted from the experience, and it's going to be an overwhelmingly positive one. And I know you said you are always walking around your properties, you're talking to people. I imagine you have some really good stories of interacting with people on your properties. Can you share any recent one that really stuck with you for some reason?
Well, I get a lot of them. And I do want to point out, I'm one of a couple hundred people that make this company work.
Yeah.
A few hundred people that, from our housekeeping staff, landscaping staff, to our senior executives. It is a incredible team of people. You know, recently, and this has happened a number of times, and it's just really a beautiful thing. I got an email from a young man that wanted to get permission to propose at the Americana brand by the fountain. And I just thought that was what a compliment, right? On your property. Now, we get it all the time up at the Miramar. Of course, you're on a beach and it's beautiful and it's a resort. But this is in the middle of a shopping center. First of all, what that tells me is, for so many people, it's not a shopping center. It's a place that they just come and enjoy. It's a destination to them. But then I sent it out to my team and I said, hey, team, let's make this happen. And that's all I have to say to the team. And it was incredible. And then I got pictures back from him taking his girlfriend at the time on the trolley. We had it all planned out, to going around the park, getting off in a certain space, having all the rose petals in the park, and having, so I was so proud of my team that it meant so much to them to make it a special day for these two people. And that's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And to be clear, when someone is sending you a message to ask for permission, they could technically anywhere on your properties just, get on one knee and propose.
Sure.
But they wanted to make it into a bigger thing. Is that right?
They wanted to make it into a bigger thing and a special thing. And I think this gentleman was just a very courteous, good guy that said, I probably should just ask for permission so I don't get removed from doing something silly.
Yeah.
But no, listen, people feel, and it makes me really happy, that they own these properties. It's theirs. And that's great. That's what we want. And they're also, very vocal about if there's something going on that they don't like. And we hear about that. And that's good. That's a good thing. Yeah. And we listen to them.
Yes, yes. When people are hearing this conversation, they know Rick Caruso has done tremendously well in real estate. He has the storied career. But I'm sure early on in your career, there were one or two things that didn't exactly go to plan.
Sure.
So can you share perhaps one of the expensive mistakes, or it doesn't even need to be expensive, but a mistake that you made early on in your career that really taught you something that you then keep with you today?
Listen, you make a lot of mistakes and you need to make a lot of mistakes. And hopefully you'll learn from the mistakes. That's just the way life is. And fortunately, I've never made a mistake that has been to the point that it's destroyed the company. So that's good. That's a good thing. So you have to be measured in what you do. But I made a mistake some years ago. There was a project that we were working on down in Carlsbad. And I really loved this project. And in the city of Carlsbad, which is an incredible, seaside city, not very pro-development, which is fine. Most of where we build don't support developments, and we intentionally want to be where there's high barriers to entry because it creates value. But we work closely with the city council and the community, and we did sort of all the things that we normally do as a company, and being very open-minded with the community and listening to them. And we got our project approved by the city council, which has happened in the past. The neighboring indoor mall that doesn't like competition filed for a referendum to vote against, to have a community vote, a citywide vote. Same thing happened in Glendale, and we defeated that and obviously built the Americana. Well, down here in Carlsbad, we lost the vote. And we lost the vote because we moved away from a formula of success and tried some things that were different, but my gut knew weren't right. Not in a bad way, but it wasn't true and authentic to how we do our business. And there were some voices in the company that wanted to do things a little bit differently. And against my better judgment, I gave them sort of the space to do that, which as an executive, sometimes you have to do that. But you shouldn't do it if your gut is it's going to be a problem. And we lost the vote, and we lost a lot of money. A lot of money. We lost millions and millions of dollars. And that was painful. I would also say, though, maybe the best thing that could have happened to us, because went back and we spent a lot of time learning from it. Let's break this down. What was working? What wasn't working? Why did we go off course and all this kind of stuff? And since then, that was the only project that we've ever been defeated in. And all the malls have always attacked us and always tried to stop us because they hate competition. But when you own a dinosaur, you don't want to be competed with. And dinosaurs don't fight well anymore. So they fight us, but we've been able to push back and win those kind of victories. So listening to the community, listening to yourself is super important, and staying true to yourself.
Not only competitors, but companies who are looking at any kind of real estate development have seen your mistakes, your wins, and they also study you and they try to emulate what you're doing in different ways. Even today, when people know your properties, there are properties that have tried to do different versions in their own way, but taking a lot of the same elements from what you're doing. What would you say today is still something that you believe is contrarian about where retail is and where it's going?
Our job, and is something I'm really focused on, is every day we've got to reinvent an industry. Not reinvent a product type, reinvent an industry. I'll give you an example of the Grove completely reinvented a mall, and that's an industry. So then the question is, okay, what are you going to do next? Well, the Americana, in so many ways, reinvented mixed use on how we designed it, how we laid it out, how we operate the residential, how we operate the retail. We got to go do that again. Now what are we going to do? Well, Palisades Village, very much reinvented an industry in terms of the size of the stores, how they get laid out and used. If you take the Palisades, the total square footage of that village could fit inside the Nordstrom at the Grove.
Really?
Yeah. You don't realize it the way it's laid out. You think it's much bigger than it is.
Yeah.
But it has the same amount of shops as the Grove, because we made a decision to encourage every retailer to scale down. And then we put the storage underneath so that the sales floor can be really efficient. Mm-hmm. Very different model in the industry. And now people are trying to copy that. You look at the Miramar, it doesn't look and feel like a hotel when you pull up. Very intentional. And all the hotel operators were fighting me on it. What we were building there was a home, because I wanted to welcome people home and welcome people back. And the other little trick that we do is that every project we build, we write a book. And the book describes what we're building. And everybody who works on the project, the pipe fitters, the bricklayers, everybody, the carpenters, gets a copy of the story. So the story at Miramar is, this was a home that was built in the 30s and the 40s, like the great manor houses up in Montecito, that were the summer cottages for the wealthy in the East Coast that would come out for the summer by train. And this is a home now that has been converted to a hotel. Mm. And so we never hired a hotel architect to build the main house. We hired a residential designer to do it, because I really wanted it to feel like a home.
Wow. I love that book that you do.
The books are fun.
Yeah. It's like you're truly bringing this narrative to life. So that way, when people are doing their jobs, it feels like they have a story.
Part of it. Yeah, absolutely.
You had mentioned the Palisades Village. Prior to the fires, I would go to the Palisades Farmers Market every Sunday. So I spent a ton of time at that property, and it's truly so beautiful. But now we're almost a year and a half out from one of the most devastating events in LA history, of course, the LA fires. And the Pacific Palisades fires, ravaged through the entire community, and the Palisades Village itself remained basically untouched. Yep. So I have to ask, what did you know about fire preparation that the city officials just didn't?
Well, listen, I'm going to be very, very honest about this.
Please.
Listen, we've got really stupid leadership in the city of LA.
Yeah.
And it's not just at the highest levels, it's through a lot of levels. And they were very unprepared. The head of DWP, I think, should have been fired the next day. She wasn't, for not having water in the reservoirs. Here's what we knew. We knew we were building in an area that is prone to fires. No different than we knew that when we built the Miramar. So when we built the Miramar, forget the name of the fire at the time that was up there, about 6 years ago. And the fire was on the other side of the hill. It was coming towards us. We were just in framing. So we're all wood because it's a low-rise place. And I called the head of security of our company, a guy named Banyan Hutter, and I said, how do we protect ourselves if that fire comes over the hill? Because the fire department up in Santa Barbara, Montecito, rightfully needs to make the homes a priority and not the commercial buildings a priority, especially not ours. We're just in framing. And he put together a plan. And the plan had our own water trucks, our own firefighting force, and retardant to be brought in. And as the fire proceeded, we stationed those there. And I remember being up there one day. It was so eerie. There was so much smoke, you couldn't see the sky. There was this eerie glow of the fire getting close. And all of our people are stationed, to defend themselves. Fortunately, the fire never got that close. Okay, so what do you do as a company? You learn. What do you do as a city official? Learn. This isn't the first fire in the city of Los Angeles. And so we had a manual if there's a fire. And it started with, we built the Palisades with non-combustible materials. Things that look like wood, siding, are really concrete. We designed it where there isn't openings where embers can get in, vents and whatnot. Most of the homes in the Palisades burned from the inside out because embers went through venting and went inside the home. And when the wind warnings came out, which everybody got, other than Mayor Bass, we called into play the plan. And Banyan called me and said, I'm ready to execute the plan. I said, go for it. Now, this is before a fire had ever started. We stationed the firefighters. We stationed the retardant trucks. We stationed the water trucks. Not that we ever expected the hydrants to run out of water. We didn't want to be a sort of a user of water that we wanted to be used for the homes. And so when the fire did start, we were ready. Retardant went on our buildings. And by the way, they went on all the buildings around us. And our firefighters fought the fire. And embers, thank God, were bouncing off the concrete. We weren't getting we had a little bit of a fire adjacent to one of the buildings. But we were able to save the whole 2 blocks of the commercial district. We saved all the buildings on the other side of us and the buildings on our side of us. But the competency shown by Banyan and the team diametrically opposed to the competence shown by the city.
Yep.
It's actually a master class of how not to do something and a master class of how to be prepared. And as I said from the beginning, what's predictable is preventable. A fire was absolutely predictable. And by the way, there was a fire there a week before that many of us, including me, said was the start of the fire the week later. And knowing that you had a fire there a week before, why didn't you have fire trucks stationed there when the winds came up? Why didn't you make sure the reservoir was full of water? Why didn't you have an evacuation plan in place? It's crazy. My wife and I went out to Malibu this weekend. We had a home in Malibu that we lost. It still breaks our heart, like so many people that lost their homes. There wasn't a fire truck in Malibu, even trying to put out the fires. You would think if you had even half a brain, you'd call in the fire boats from Marina del Rey to be watering down all the homes on the beach. You're not going to run out of water, by the way. You're in the ocean. None of that happened. So the system just imploded. But the problem was the city was not prepared. And boy, it showed, and hundreds of thousands of people are really suffering because of the lack of competence of so many people in the city.
And first, I'm sorry to hear about your house.
Oh, I appreciate it. My daughter lost a home. My son lost a home. And we're the lucky ones because we have resources. But I really feel, and I appreciate what you're saying, but I think about all the people that were living in their homes for 60 years, can't afford to rebuild. They're part of the fabric of that community. No different like in Altadena, in Malibu, and the working people that lost their jobs.
Yeah.
Because there's no residents there anymore. So anyway, we're going to come back, but it's a painful reminder of, I hope all of us have learned in the city and the state, don't elect people based on ideology. Ideology is not going to save your home in a fire. Elect people based on competency and experience.
I think many people myself included, were very excited about the potential for Rick Caruso to run for LA mayor and maybe governor at one point. Obviously, your plans have changed. I'm sure there were so many factors that weighed into that decision, but what was the ultimate final lever that convinced you to not run? And how do you intend to continue to serve the city of LA from the private sector?
It's never just one thing. Mm-hmm. And I spent a lot of time studying the governor's race and working on it. And I was excited about it going around the state. I loved when I ran for mayor. I was obviously disappointed when I lost. And I talked a lot to the family about it. And Tina, my wife, is an incredibly private person, literally the sweetest human being on the face of the earth. And she's so supportive. And even despite her wanting to keep the family really private, she was all in when I first ran for mayor, and she was encouraging me to run for either mayor or governor, and so were my 4 kids. And we talked a lot about it. Here's the difference and why I ultimately decided not to do it. And I hope that one day I'll be able to serve as an elected official. I've always wanted to do that, and I hope I can do that because I want to be able to do some real good from that sort of seat in life if I ever get the opportunity. As much as I wanted to do it this time, the world has changed so much in the last 3 years since I ran, or 3.5 years. People are angrier. And I was just worried about the well-being of the family. They're angrier because we've got a president who's really says some terrible things. And then we got the far left that says terrible things. You got a Bernie Sanders that says terrible things and an AOC. And a lot of it from the far left is beating up on successful people, right? And you see it now in New York with the mayor of New York with that terrible video of him looking into the camera, tapping it. Yes, I'm coming after the rich. And then names a very wealthy resident of New York City and effectively sort of puts a bullseye on somebody's back. And that was exactly my concern, that I'm going to run for office in an era where being successful or being a billionaire is a bad thing. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to get some lunatic like a Bernie Sanders or an AOC to be calling out my name, which he did in the mayor's race because he came out and campaigned against me. But it wasn't as vocal back then. It has the potential of harming my family. Mm-hmm. And the only thing I care about at the end of the day is my family. And so I decided, hopefully 4 years from now, whatever the case may be, Donald Trump is gone and Bernie Sanders is gone. And there's more leaders that are in the middle, that are more moderate, go back to a day where people wanted to work together, even though they had differing views. And maybe that's an environment where I can be a part of it and work hard and just be accepted because I want to do some good things. And we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah.
But I'm going to still stay very active privately. Mm-hmm. And I'm doing that. And we're making a big difference through Steadfast LA. And we're actually ramping that up to be even more important in the city and the county. And so I'm excited about that.
I hear you. The world is a crazy place right now. And I feel like for better or for worse, I think it's for worse. The fact that social media seems to be this amplifier of both sides and almost the negative of both sides.
Right.
So I hear you. I think what people were really excited for you, and I'm speaking also, this is my personal opinion. I think going back to what you spoke about with the Palisades, you were a business owner, you saw a problem, you saw something that was preventable, and you created this action plan. The fact that you were so operational and you were able to truly save a critical part of that community in the Palisades and make sure that it was not completely wiped out, that mentality and that ability to take something on paper and turn it into action is what we need in government right now.
We do.
And it's just, I think for me, I hope that whoever steps into that next LA mayor role, California governor role, is someone who has hopefully some degree of business background, who can apply that same framework. I mean, you look at what's happening in San Francisco with the mayor up there who has, the business background. I think that's what California needs.
Oh, I listen, I agree. And Dan Lurie in San Francisco, I talked to Dan. He's doing a great job. And that can happen anywhere. It's like you were talking about my social media. Last week I was in Nashville. It's amazing what's happening in Nashville. I met with the mayor of Nashville. He's a relatively liberal guy, and I don't believe in this baloney. It's a blue city, it's a red city, and blue cities are terrible and red cities are great. Just look at the person. This is a relatively liberal guy, but he's also very moderate in his viewpoint. He wants to do a lot of things that liberals would love to hear, but he realizes he has to create a business environment so that the city can thrive in order to do that. So you have all this development happening and companies moving down there. The streets are clean and there aren't encampments, as you walk around Nashville. Austin, Texas, the same thing. You don't even have to go that far. Look at Newport Beach. Look at Glendale. Glendale is one of the best cities in the state of California. And you look at Culver City. This is my personal view. Go to San Jose. The guy that is the mayor of San Jose is running for governor. He's exceptional. I hope he becomes our governor. I'm leaning in big for him because he's run a business, to your point, successfully. He started out as a school teacher, comes from modest beginnings, and then became mayor. And he now has taken San Jose. It's the safest large city in America. How about that? 30% of the homeless he's gotten off the street. He has more capita per person in San Jose than any other city in the United States.
Wow.
Wow is right. I mean, you can do these things, but look at that person's track record and say, yes, please go run our state.
Yep.
And I'll take a guy that left in shame, as he should. Swalwell was in the lead? Oh, my God.
Yeah, that was bad.
People were thinking about voting for him. People did send him money. We knew he was corrupt.
Yeah.
Everybody sort of knew he was corrupt. And so maybe our system is sort of starting to purge these people out. I hope so. Because they're bad folks. We don't need them. They don't do anything for anybody that's worthwhile.
You mentioned homelessness. Yeah. And so homelessness is one of the biggest issues for most civilians in the city of Los Angeles now. You've been very outspoken about how pervasive this issue is, how challenging it is. So if you were in leadership running the city, what's one thing that you would do to address the issue? And even though you're not, what's something that you feel really passionate about that can help?
This is what I said when I was campaigning. People deserve a better life than living on a street. You are actually not progressive, not liberally wonderful because you believe that somebody has a right to live on the street. You are hurting that person. And then marry that with enforcing the law and build enough shelter and housing and treatment that you get people off the street and give them an opportunity to rebuild their lives. But you do not allow them to live on the street. You enforce the law. You enforce the law that was held up by the California courts that say it's illegal to live on the streets as long as there is housing for them. You want to make sure you've got the right housing for them. And that's what other cities have done, and they have solved their homeless problem. And so now what is LA doing? Karen Bass said, I'm not going to enforce that law. The city council and Nithya Raman, who is running against Karen Bass, the other day just voted not to remove this whole encampment down in Venice that's impacting a school in a neighborhood. What are you thinking?
Yeah.
Those folks deserve a better life that are living on the street, and the people in that neighborhood deserve to have a clean, safe neighborhood. Mm-hmm. You're not serving anybody's good. I don't even know how you can justify it. But when I ran for mayor, Bass's big thing was, he's trying to criminalize homelessness. That was the buzzword back in the day when everybody had to be woke or non-woke, whatever that meant. The reality is the smart cities are enforcing the law and building housing and marrying it with the right kind of services. And I always turn to what is working, because I'm a big believer if you're going to criticize something, you better have a solution for it. What is working are places like the People Concern, Skid Row, Downtown Women's Center, Union Rescue Mission. They take people in, they have housing, they have the services they need for mental health care, for drug addiction. They have a 90% effective rate of people not going back onto the streets. Anybody in business would take 90%,
yeah,
right, as a success score. What is the city doing? I don't know if you read the other day. 50% of the people that the city is bringing off the street are going back on the streets. It's a joke. And most people who have some level of intelligence would realize when something isn't working, don't keep doing it.
Yes.
But somehow our leadership keeps doing the same thing, hoping for a different result. Mm-hmm. That's the old-fashioned, definition of insanity. So my heart goes out to people that are living on the streets. And what you see happening now, which we're doing our best as a family to lean into and solve, is the amount of families that are now on the streets, the amount of young kids that are on the streets. We support a school down in Skid Row called Para los Niños. That school now has more children going to that school that are living on the streets than ever before. It used to be just the working poor that were sharing apartments together. Now it's the working poor who are on the streets. This city should be ashamed of itself for allowing what's happening on Skid Row and throughout the city.
It seems like the organizations that you just mentioned, the people concerned and otherwise, that if anyone is going to put their dollars towards any kind of charitable organization, right?
Yes.
Would your recommendation be finding those organizations that have that high efficacy rate, whatever the metric may be, and essentially saying, I'm going to put my dollars towards the ones that do the best?
100%. Or support a school like Para los Niños, which Tina and I have been supporting for 30 years, which if it wasn't for that school in the middle of Skid Row, in the middle of hell, those kids would not have a school to go to with that level of safety. And that school is serving kids from 6 months to 5 years old. They're the most tender, the most dear, and the most beautiful. And we just love being a part of it. Every one of our children, since they were young, have worked down there. They still work down there now. We throw a big party for Christmas time down there for the families. But there's a lot of great things happening. And so we can't lose sight of the good things that are happening just because the city's so incompetent. And this is what Steadfast LA and I'm going to really work hard on, is moving the narrative and hopefully forcing a discussion that gets the city to move in a direction that's going to be more beneficial to the quality of life for everybody in LA that needs it.
And another topic that is really crucial for, I think, the future of California, specifically Los Angeles too, is the ability for small businesses to thrive.
Yes.
And this is something that I've heard you speak to, and it's something that I worry about from many different levels. I think there are small businesses from, your local restaurant to really all types. It's increasingly expensive to operate a small business in Los Angeles. And it seems like there are a lot of policies that don't really enable businesses to thrive here at this stage. So what would be your way that you would address those problems that small businesses in the city are facing?
Well, we've got a city that's not business friendly. And I run a business in the city, so I know it. I also started as a small business. And so when I started my business almost 40 years ago, LA was a place and California was a place I knew that if I dreamed big, worked hard, I could pull myself up the rung of the ladder. And the city had my back. The state had my back. I was in an environment that celebrated somebody starting a business. Now we're in an environment that the city makes it difficult for you to do business here and expensive for you to do business here because it's so overregulated. And to your point, you're exactly right. If you own a small business, it's so expensive to operate, or a restaurant. That's why so many small businesses are closing. And what people need to understand is the economy of Los Angeles, 90% are small businesses. And frankly, we've lost a lot of major businesses here too. But what you do is you pull back the unnecessary red tape, and you have to change your culture. And the culture starts at the top with the mayor and saying, we welcome small business. We are here for you. We're going to make it easy for you. We're going to support you. And then you make sure that all your department heads have the same culture, right? And you just change this narrative. What Dan Lurie has done in San Francisco more than anything, he's changed the narrative. We want you here. We need to do that in LA. And all these problems are so easily fixable with the right leadership. No doubt in my mind.
Yep. We're going to go to the last 3 questions that I ask every guest. First one is, can you share a system that you have in place that benefits your career or business? And it can truly be a system for anything.
I have my routines for sure have come into play that seem to work for me. Everybody should have their own routine that works for them. So I don't want to tell you my routine necessarily because it may not work for you. But I will tell you this. I have really simple priorities. And my really simple priorities are my faith, my family, my friends, and having fun. And notably, work isn't in there because work is a given. It's not a choice. I believe everybody should work hard, whatever they do. But I do believe that you make a choice about whatever your faith is. And I think it's important to have faith. Making a choice that your family is your priority. I drove my kids to school. I did carpool for every one of my 4 kids. And you can find the time to do it and still build a business. I love being around my friends and I love having fun. You've got to have a balance in life. So I believe in working hard and I believe in playing hard. And sometimes I play harder than I should and other times I work harder than I should. But I think you've got to do what works for you. But I admire people the most that aren't the wealthiest people. I admire people that have their priorities really set and in their individual role in life, just do great stuff. I mean, I could name so many people at our company or our hotel that are entry-level jobs or the landscaping jobs or the housekeeping jobs that just make an absolute difference in the quality of our company and the quality of the experience at the Grove. You meet Coco or Larry at Valet, they set the tone for that property. And they've been there for over, 25 years since the beginning of the Grove. Same with the housekeeping staff and the landscaping staff. There's a gentleman named Charlie that's worked for us in landscaping for 30 years. He's the hardest working guy I know. He puts me to shame and takes the most pride in his work. And if you tell him the flowers look good this morning, Charlie, he's just beaming.
Wow.
And I just love people like that.
Yeah. Hardworking people.
Just good and take pride in what they do. Yeah. So they're not the wealthiest people, but they're the richest people.
The next question comes from the social currency corner, where I get your input on a business story or trend that's impacting business and culture. More and more entrepreneurs are moving away from California and New York for more tax advantage states. What needs to happen to prevent these states from losing these really precious entrepreneurs?
Be competitive. I mean, just look at the other states around us and what they're doing. Look at what Tennessee's doing down in Nashville. Look at what Texas is doing down in Austin. Look at what Florida's doing. And then look at what California's doing. They're talking about raising taxes. And New York is raising taxes. It's just crazy. It's not only, in my mind, the people that you're losing. When you lose that person, you're also losing their philanthropy. You're losing their broad intellect, and eventually you're going to lose their business because they're going to want their business closed. But even more importantly, what you're saying to young, smart entrepreneurs, inventors, creators, whatever it is, don't come here. Go somewhere else that's going to welcome you and celebrate you. And that's a race to the bottom. And I think the leadership of this state right now in our city, they're basically overseeing decline. That's what they're managing. They're managing decline. Mm-hmm. And that's a really bad place to be. We need to get people in there that manage growth and opportunity and quality of life.
Interesting wording, because it really resonates. Managing the decline. It does. It feels like
Sadly,
that.
That's what's happening.
But I'm a cautious optimist. And I think any election cycle brings this new opportunity for refreshed leadership, people to have just a different perspective when you have new people in.
I agree. That's why the governor's race is really critically important.
Yeah. So let's end with a listener question. This question comes from Jordan. I'm building my first business and everyone tells me I need to find my niche, but you deliberately ignored what the retail industry said that malls should be. How do you know when you're being innovative versus just naive?
Well, listen, I think they're probably both the same in many respects. And what I said before was there's a real beauty and it's liberating when you don't know the right answer, right? If everybody knew the right answer, we'd never be moving forward. Mm-hmm. And I always take a look at, like I talked about Disney, but look at like Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs did not invent the cell phone. He reinvented it to a point that you can't live without his phone, his design. It was an incredible thought. Were there times that he thought he was on the wrong track? Sure. He got thrown out of his own company. Mm-hmm. People forget that. And then came back. Mm-hmm. So I think Henry Ford went bankrupt twice. I saw an Instagram post the other day, and I don't spend a lot of time on Instagram, but there's some things I really like about it. And it was this theme that Coca-Cola, the first year of Coca-Cola, I don't know if this is true or not because it was on Instagram, sold only 9 bottles of Coca-Cola. Probably true. So I think being naive and struggling doesn't mean that your idea isn't good. And I think you got to run with it until maybe it's proven it's not going to work. But don't let anybody stop you. And the people that are stopping you is probably a good sign because, like I said before, if nobody's in your way, you're not going anywhere. And you just got to get out there and do it.
Amazing. Well, Rick, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me. I loved it.
Thank you for everything that you have done for the city and you continue to do. And I'm just a personal fan of your properties. They're truly a fun place. As you said, there's a sense of ownership of feeling like this is my place to hang out. And that's how I've always thought of them. So
well,
thank you.
That makes me very happy. Thanks for having me. You're terrific.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Social Currency. Before you go, take a second to subscribe to the show wherever you're listening so you never miss an episode. And if you liked what you heard today, please rate and review the podcast. It massively helps the work I do to bring this show to life. And if you have a friend who is as obsessed with business and culture as you are, send this episode to them because sharing the show is one of the best ways to support it. And if you want to keep up with the hottest business lore in real time, follow me on Instagram at Sammi Cohen Talks and subscribe to my newsletter, Social Currency, linked in the show notes. Social Currency is a production of Social Currency Media and Money News Network. The podcast is hosted and executive produced by me, Sammi Cohen, and produced by the Money News Network team. See you next time.